Hello and welcome to the Honest Not Perfect podcast. My name is Suzanne Ellingham and I'm the director of Source Events, the platform that helps connect retailers, brands and wholesalers to manufacturers and makers globally.
And my name is Jack Stratton. I'm Director of Insider Trends. We are a global retail trend spotting agency helping brands to spot what's coming next.
Welcome to Honest Not Perfect, where we sit down and talk to experts and people really driving change within retail and beyond. That could be change in sustainability, manufacturing, global trade, processes, just about everything in between. Today, I'm joined by Helena Mansell-Stopher. She's the founder of Products of Change, but Helena's career started within licensing. Seen her work with some of the most well-known brands in the world like Mattel, National Geographic, amongst many others. But it's her work in circularity, both academic and with organisations like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, that has really led her down the path that she's now on. So, Helena, who are Products of Change? Where did that come about?
Wow. The story of over 6 years ago.
I know. I mean, I could have started 25 years ago.
And I've been in the industry for that amount of time as well, so I could totally have spoken to you about it for that long. So what happens as we mature.
Yeah.
POC. So, I mean, as you mentioned earlier on, I've been really lucky in my career. I've worked with some amazing brands and have worked with retail and amazing product manufacturers to do some really fun stuff, actually. You know, the product industry is a fun industry. But actually, Products Change came about when I joined National Geographic to start a consumer products program with a huge amount of my old colleagues from Mattel. And I landed there and I thought, okay, well, this is going to be fascinating. And actually, as I started to unpick what Nat Geo meant as a brand, we then started learning about the 180 years of history of the National Geographic Society and how it was all created to preserve and drive awareness of this beautiful planet that we live on. And here's us trying to make money commercially to continue to keep it alive and growing as a brand. But then I started to learn from all of the explorers and the scientists actually just how damaging producing product and actually us as a human race is on the planet. And I've been in this industry for over 25 years, absolutely love it. And I was just like, wow, why is nobody talking about this? Why aren't the fashion companies, the toy companies, the producers of all these amazing products, half for children, not talking about how we protect the future?
Yeah.
So that's how POC started. It really just started as a movement of people in the industry wanting. I had 7 people around a table and I said, let's start the conversation. And so we got some of the explorers and scientists to come in and share what they were doing. The Natural History Museum hosted us. University College of the Arts London hosted us. And that's how it all started really as a movement in the industry to start to shine a light actually or ring a bell of actually the impact of industry on the environment.
I think it sounds like it's one of those moments where you see something you can't unsee and then you become aware that actually things have got to change. And I suspect in your role where you're about to start producing stuff to commercially fund an organisation like that, probably the first question is, okay, we need to think about doing this differently. Where did that journey start? When did you realise actually we need to start doing something differently and it kind of clicked, that's not quite so straightforward?
Yeah, I mean, even back when I was at National Geographic and I was trying to put the plan together of how we launched this brand to market, and you go to retail and you present the style guide and the products and how you want to drive the brand in market. And the retailers know, well, how is this different from anything else? How are you different from the Science Museum or the Natural History Museum? They wanted to kind of put us in a little box. And I said, well, actually, we're preserving nature. And it was actually an amazing buyer called John Carolan, who was at Sainsbury's at the time, and now he's at Boots, and he's been within the world of buying all of his career. And he said, that's your point of difference, is actually your sustainable products. If you can really start to lead the market doing things differently with sustainability, nobody else is doing that. And so I'm like, okay, then that's what we want to do anyway, so let's lead with that conversation. And then it was those learnings of doing that at National Geographic that actually, as we were talking to those producers, because you want to work with the top producers in the market that have got the retail relationships, that have got really good design handwriting, but it just wasn't on their radar. So then we had to really look at how we launched the brand to market and look at, okay, well, maybe we need to start working with some innovative startups, start doing things differently and have a mixture of the two.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where that early learning came from. then I went to Cambridge and did studying in sustainability. And I did a dance degree. I'm not an academic. So for me to do that was I think I cried every night of that whole course. But then, I was able that I had the stripes on my shoulders. So actually I knew what I was talking about. So then we could go to these companies and actually start to, with real insight, understand how we can start to drive change within their businesses.
Yeah. And how receptive were some of those businesses to start with? Because I'm always interested in the difference between the views of the people on the ground and the people at the top, and how much that kind of corporate message of we need to do better, or we need to do things more sustainably, or we need to look at our footprint, how much that actually trickles down to empower people to change. And I'm interested to know what that was like for you at the time and how that's changed, if it's changed.
Well, there is a huge gap in intention and action at the minute. And you can see that where you go on any corporate website and they've got these amazing targets, and this, I started this 6 years ago. I was at Nat Geo 3 years before that. So, the 2030 goals were a decade away, if not longer. We're 5 years away from them now. And actually, industry doesn't move that quickly. And so very early on, hardly any of the brands that I work with within our industry, or even the retailers I work with, really had goals.
Yeah.
So they didn't even have any goals. So in the early days, sustainability was just the nice thing to do, or actually it was seen as a marketing initiative.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we've gone into the issues that we've got with CSMA and all the Green Claims Directive and the Green Claims Code. That's come down because of that, because businesses saw it as a USP, a reason to sell more, rather than actually taking sustainability seriously and understanding how they really start to implement it. And I think the reason why they didn't necessarily look at how they'll implement it is because really sustainability is all about efficiencies and change management. And unless you want to do that from the top, it's really hard to trickle it down.
Yeah.
So then you end up with your sustainability advocates right at the bottom in a junior level, really pushing up. And those advocates can do some amazing things, but actually without the business unlocking financial capabilities, there's a ceiling to how far that can go as well.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of that happening today even.
Yeah, there's a reason I asked that question, because I think I think you've seen some businesses who are doing the right thing for the right reasons, and then you see those ones that are doing the right things. And sometimes you've got to think, you know what, if you're doing the right things just to tick a box, at least you're doing something. So at least it's moving. But then it's actually, I feel like we're at a point where there's going to be some innovation, there's going to be some step change, there's going to be some transformation just around the corner. And it's those organisations that really empower those people, be it in the buying community, in the procurement, within kind of that sustainability, even in the materiality. It's how you empower those people to really think differently about it.
And actually, if you ask anybody, the consumer, people within in a workplace, everybody wants to do the right thing. But when you look at it on a granular level, what does that mean for them within their decision making on a daily basis? So, even if we look at buying, you've got an inset margin and an intake margin and an outtake margin. And most retailers' databases don't tell the buyer what the outtake margin was. And so even if you were to go with a sustainably sourced material, and yes, it's an increase in price, but you're showing that there's most likely going to be an increase in tax at the end for using that material, because that's what's coming down the line with European legislation. But because that isn't what they're targeted on, it's, well, I'm targeted on that little bit there. So unless somebody in the organisation can show you that outtake margin with all the benefits that come from it, or sustainability is part of their KPIs, that one roadblock there stops progress for a whole industry. And it's amazing how it comes down to really simple elements within a business that stop progress. We
had Simon Platts on the podcast a few episodes ago.
Amazing.
And he talks about this, and it's one of those moments when you see it, you can't unsee it, and you think, why aren't we doing this? And he said, if you're only metric and how you're remunerated and how your bonus is set up is on your in margin, how cheaply you can buy something, then that means you're always going to be on a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
Every single time. It means you're going to buy 5,000 or something when actually you only need 3,000 because that's what you're targeted on. And actually, if you were targeted on the out margin, that would change your entire outlook, because actually what you're then looking at is, okay, well, how many of those did we sell at full price? How many went to sale? How many are in a warehouse? How many are we writing off against tax or whatever they do with it?
Yeah.
And actually then it becomes that unit maybe didn't cost 75p. Maybe its true cost was like £1.30.
Exactly.
And it then comes down to actually fundamentally are the metrics within retail, if they were able to see what the total cost of that buy was or what that range was, how quickly would you start to change it?
It would change overnight.
Yeah.
It would change it. We've seen it even, there's EPR, extended producer responsibility is one of the first pieces of legislation that's come down, hitting packaging first and it's going into product second.
Yeah.
And as part of EPR, coat hangers are going to be part of something that gets taxed. So overnight, we'll see retailers start to change the material that they use for coat hangers, because why would you want to be taxed that amount?
Yeah.
So we will see, I think, the issue within that is just not having the data at that early point. And actually, so that's kind of where we need to get to. So as a product producer, go to the buyer with all the information. Did you know that this is going to be the tax implications of this at the end of its life? Did you know that, yes, we're getting a better price for 10,000 units, but if we produce 5,000 units, that might be more per unit, but you're not having to have
Total cost is lower.
5,000 waste. Exactly. We're going to get taxed on that waste again with a new regulation. So suddenly how we make decisions is not necessarily on the price per product. It's going to be on the value of what that product brings across the whole of its life cycle.
Yeah. And I think it's such an interesting conversation, because it sounds like such an easy thing to say, why don't you just target them on out margin? And then you realise not everybody has the systems. But then you think, I'm pretty certain somebody within finance to that organisation knows what the true cost of that range was.
Of course.
Why are you not sharing
But
that?
that'd be like us saying, like GDP.
Yeah.
Everything is tracked by GDP. We shouldn't really track it by that, because that's all on new goods.
Yeah.
Not on services and rental. And, it's just on what's made.
Yeah.
But changing that system takes a long, long time. And actually, you need really brave leaders of an organisation say, actually, this is what we're going to do. And it'll take them a couple of years. But if it affects the money in your pocket, honestly, it will happen overnight. Honestly, it will happen overnight. It affects the money that's in your pocket, because that's how most people make a decision within an organisation context, if it affects me personally.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Have you seen, and this is just my curiosity, because I know there are a few retailers that are looking at moving to this, but have you seen anybody actually go down that journey of changing the way that they are targeting their buy or targeting that?
Yeah, I mean, IKEA do. So IKEA will have a carbon remuneration. Lego Group have carbon remuneration. So they're starting to put, even Liverpool Football Club are doing that. So there's companies that are doing it where they're saying, actually, you've got a carbon budget.
Yeah.
And even Target in the US, so they've been working with a really clever platform called Dayrise, which can give them Scope 3, like bill of material impact data. Yeah. And what they're doing is they're saying, okay, pardon me, this T-shirt has got this, not just carbon, but has got an environmental impact across these 5 measurements of this, and this t-shirt's got this impact.
Yeah.
What's the cost differentiation between the two? So actually they're making an informed decision, not just on the cost of the product, but on the environmental metrics of the product. Because they've got the data, they can play with the data and the finances to make a more informed decision.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to get to.
Outside of Target, because I kind of think of them as very US-centric.
They are.
Would you say that they're would you say that, and also I'd say Lego and IKEA are also just leading the way.
They are.
Are there any kind of retailers that you're seeing, you don't have to name names, that are starting on that journey now? And I think my next question is going to be, what are the hurdles that they're hitting that stop them from moving as fast as they want to?
I mean, some of our, Dunelm are doing some great work. Asda are doing some great work. Tesco's are doing some great work. Even Marks and Spencer's with their Plan A obviously had a tough time, but they're back on top of that now. H&M. So they're all doing some great bodies of work. And a lot of it's in the background because, guess all the sexy, marketable stuff, the easy stuff has been done. And so people say to me, oh, there's no progress happening. There is so much progress happening. They're all setting up new databases to input impact materials, impact measurements, whether it be carbon or environmental, they're all building those systems that are giving them more visibility on the impact of them as a company. And then from that, they're going to be able to start to make these decisions in the future. So there's a huge amount of innovation happening in the back end, but it's just not the sexy, marketable stuff. So we just don't hear it.
No. And I suppose my next question, because I think we're probably both the same, it's like I feel that my view is that I think when we start seeing people truly collaborate is when we're going to start to see progress. Do you think, because all of that work is happening in the back end, do you think there's collaboration between these companies in terms of sharing?
So much collaboration in all areas, and actually that's what POC does. So we pull these working groups together. So even last Tuesday, we hosted a fashion working group at the Mills Fabrica, which is an innovative biotech company for the fashion industry. And we had retailers, brand owners, manufacturers all together looking at how we get progress within the fashion industry, because they're all part of that supply chain. And not one of them can fix it on their own, because they're all making decisions that affect that product. And so unless you get everybody together to understand what the roadblocks are and then find solutions to that and then trial it, we just get stuck. And that's where a lot of companies are at the minute. They're kind of stuck because they've done the earliest, the easiest stuff, reduced their packaging, took away a bit of single-use plastic, maybe using one sustainably sourced material, or there's an option to use it if you want a higher price. And then it's kind of stopped. And so that's kind of what we now industry need. That's why we need industry to come together even more now, because we need industry to work together to kind of advance things forward. Even on the new technology side of stuff, whether it be materials innovations or even technology within housing the data from your company, companies can't do this on their own. It's too cost prohibitive, especially with everything else that's going on in the world at the minute, where businesses have been and will continue to. It's really tough for businesses out there, but legislation isn't changing. The dates are in, they're set in stone. People know what they need to do, and there's a lot of businesses under a huge amount of pressure at the minute.
I think this is one of the key topics that we're going to actually be discussing at Source Fashion is around volatility, because I think every time I have one of these conversations, it's a tough business environment. I've got to concentrate on actually helping my business survive for the next 6 months. So I'm going to, I do want to do this, but the reality is that that's just not my priority right now when it's in this kind of an environment. And we were just talking very generally a few months ago, and I said, but you know what? Last 6 years, every year has been bloody awful. There's been something, whether it be COVID, coming out of COVID, before that Brexit. I would say we've been probably in, I don't know if crisis mode is the right way to put it, but it's been volatile. And then we start to get to a stage where we're starting to calm down, and not necessarily the COVID impact on retailers has disappeared, but we're starting to get to some level of normal. And then we see tariff changes, and there's a war in the Ukraine. And the question is, I suppose, in a world that is so volatile, how do we create an environment where we just accept that is now our business as usual? Like risk management is now how we do it, but we actually can't ignore these other things now.
And I think actually when we talk about sustainability, the word has just been used so much, because actually it's about efficiencies and de-risking business and saving money. That's, and so actually we need to change the rhetoric around it. Because if you change that and didn't go, sustainability, let me help you de-risk your business, let me help you be efficient for the future, let me help you rewrite that plan. That's a sustainability business plan. And actually those companies that have got sustainability rooted as part of their DNA, they're the ones that actually are growing in these turbulent times. And I think also, we look back and a lot of people have done really well out of industry for the last 20, 30, 40 years. They sit in their nice houses with their homes abroad, living quite pretty, that they've done really well. And I think the reality is actually business, the operational parameters of how we work within business has changed now.
Yeah.
Those days are over, really. Not that you're not going to make money, because obviously the world needs to go around, but how we make money, the transparency in our businesses, and actually being responsible for the impact of business. As before, you could just do what you wanted, and if you can't see it, it's not happening, you can ignore it. And that's not going to be the future anymore. And that's not wrong.
No.
And so it's actually, okay, so how do we make sure that we're building business plans to make sure that we do have a business for the future, but it's a better business?
I think what you've just said there is quite powerful. It's about reframing what sustainability means. Because I think if you say sustainability to most people, they think environmental impact. They
Eyes
think
roll.
Maybe. Or, they just go, or it's just been overused so long, so much that it means different things to different people. But if you reframed it as what's sustainability, it's the ability for your business to keep on trading. Like sustainable just means that you've de-risked. And I think if you change that to let's de-risk your business. I don't know any business in the current climate that isn't looking at their risk profile. And if you think about retail and product production, it's the conversation now is how much is far-shored, how much is near-shored, how do we make near-shoring work? And just even that process of changing their risk profile, well, you're making your business slightly more sustainable because you're de-risking it from what happens if there's something that shuts the Suez Canal down and you can't get cargo ships through, or what happens if there's a conflict in this part of anywhere. It's just helping you manage that. And by proxy, you're also probably reducing your carbon footprint in there as well. And I think that whole conversation around it's not just about carbon footprint. It's actually just about de-risking your business. And again, I wonder... You mentioned earlier that a lot of people trying to really force change are at a junior level. How many of them think about the language they use when they're proposing business cases to go up? And if they reframed it from sustainable to de-risk, how much further would that go?
So much further. And actually, that's some of the conversation that I've been having with some of our members is everybody's put their, every business wants to grow. Everybody's got their growth plans for the next 5 years, and then you review it at the end of year one. And everybody looks at certain segments of the industry and said, toys is down, fashion is up. Like, hello.
Let's put some more money in fashion.
Yeah, but do you know all the regulations that are coming? Like, do you know that the fashion industry is going to be impacted really dramatically by all the legislation that's coming? Not in a bad way. You look at the toy industry, and it's, there's so, there's more regulations around a toy pram than there is in a real pram that a baby goes in.
Yeah. It's even in fashion with children's clothes versus adult clothes and teenager baby wear, it's different.
Yeah, exactly. And so actually there should be more regulation within the fashion industry. I think the thing is that it's just happening all at once.
Yeah.
And you've got all these brands saying, we're going to have infinite growth. And well, you might not have infinite growth. If you looked at what the business could look like over the next 5 years with everything that's coming down the line, how are you going to support your partners to enable them to continue to operate?
Yeah.
Like you need to be talking about this. You need to be looking at what are the pinch points that you can support them with. And that's not happening yet.
And I feel... some of the conversations that I've had in the last few weeks with some US-based retailers has been around, I don't know how, I was quiet. When you have those moments and you're taken aback and you're just quiet for a little bit because I think, how did you think they were going to react? But their first port of call when the tariffs were announced by the US was to go straight to their manufacturers and ask for a discount to the same amount of the tariff. That was their first port of call because... they've got a tough retail environment. They don't want to be passing price increases onto their customers. And their first port of call was to go straight to their manufacturer and ask them for a reduction in their prices without the realisation that actually you guys have squeezed those manufacturers a little bit too hard. Yeah. They're not charities. They need to be able to pay their bills, their workers and everything else. And I was quite surprised by just how quickly their solution to that was somebody else can pay.
Yeah.
And actually... if you are working with your partners and you're preparing them and you're essentially working with the right people, the conversation becomes right. So we need to reduce the cost of this. How do we do that? Like, what can we do in materials? Are we looking at the data? Are we selling all of these products through? And it becomes a very different conversation and a very different it's a very different view of viewing people just as a manufacturer and a supplier and viewing people as a partner, because a partner will have the conversation with you and say, well, I think if we do this, this and this, or you look at the data and you realise you don't need as much. It's all about how ultimately you're protecting your profit margin. You can't just pass that cost down.
You can't. It's an efficiency conversation. And actually, when you talk to suppliers, and I was having this very conversation only last week, is a supplier today is most likely making less money on a product through a retailer than they were doing 10 years ago, making the same product. So what's happened is the cost has increased, and that margin that used to be the margin for the supplier has decreased and decreased and decreased because the retailer is king, and the retailer doesn't want to pass the price over to the consumer. But is there a question that actually maybe products should cost a little bit more money?
Yeah.
Maybe we would be happy to buy. We'd think about what we're spending our money on. Yeah, we'd buy less, but we'd buy a little bit better. We would be buying better. And I think we need to get off that drug of buying more, throwing things away, buying more, throwing. We need to get back on that. Actually, do we need this?
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to like that, because a lot of businesses survive to produce stuff that nobody really needs. But the reality is that we need really to be moving away from that.
Yeah, I think it's I find it interesting when we get to a stage where we have that conversation of actually products should cost a little bit more. And most people don't want a product that's, been made in factories where people can't afford to feed their families. It's not something that really we are comfortable with. And I think also there's a sense of people have forgotten how things are made and what goes into them. And I remember I was having a conversation a few weeks ago when I was on holiday, and somebody made a throwaway comment. I said, oh, this only costs this much, but, it's all in an automated factory out in China. And I went,
Is it?
And that's what I said. I said, well, how much automation do you think there really is? It's not you just put your fabric in and all of a sudden it spits out a bit of cloth. There's machinists, there's pattern cutters. It's still actually fairly manual. And I think people, my sense is that a lot of consumers have forgotten how things are made. And I wonder how much, and actually I'll ask this question, what do you feel consumers need to know in order to understand that process?
And I think that you're right. People don't understand the impact of how things are made. Most people have never been to a factory. They've never seen those hundreds of workers. And a lot of factories, a lot of factory workers are looked after.
Yeah.
But also they're in places of massive deprivation. And so they're being looked after in comparison to their community. But if you were to uplift that and bring them over here, then it's worlds apart. It's total worlds apart. I think if more people knew the impact of how things were made, I think they would think differently.
Yeah.
But we also know that through all the data is people don't want to. 3% of the population might pay more for a sustainably sourced product, but that's a very small amount. Actually, we need it to be like mass market product that are just made in a better way.
Yeah.
And maybe, some of the technology that I've seen coming in as we choose what food we eat by our little traffic light system. So, we'll have a treat and we know it's high in sugar or high in fat, but we don't allow ourselves to have that every day. There's actually technology that's out there that would enable us to actually start to see, a T-shirt versus a magazine versus a toy versus something else on the environmental impact in a similar way.
Wow.
But until that is all approved and agreed, that could be used as greenwashing.
Yeah.
And so that's why the technology is there. There's amazing companies out there. They've produced it, they've created it. And again, a lot of companies are using that in the back end. So they can see, well, this is, if it's like a 100% score, this is 100 being the best.
Yeah.
This is 55 and that's 72. The price difference is this. Okay, I'll pick the 72 because I can cover that cost of price. So I would think that as many years ago, people didn't even know what a calorie was. In 10, 20 years' time, most people will probably understand the carbon impact of a product just as we understand the impact of a calorie today. That society will start shifting. And it would just be what's standardised, especially through, digital product passports are coming down the line where each product will have to have an identifier that tells you the environmental and social impact of that product. So from 2027, that starts getting rolled out.
I mean,
within
that's
Europe.
not very far away.
It's not. And most companies have got most of the data, but it's all saved in so many different areas.
Yeah.
And also, if you're going to roll out a digital product passport, which is going to happen, the environmental messaging comes first, because obviously there's an opportunity to use it as marketing as well,
Yeah.
because suddenly you can talk directly to your consumer. So it's interesting how a lot of brands are using it as yes, it's legislation, but wow, what an opportunity to talk to the consumer.
Yeah. But
how the language is being changed. It's quite fascinating.
how many companies do you think are prepared for digital product passports?
I could probably count them on my hands.
And that's 2 years away.
It's 2 years away.
It's quite scary because we still speak to digital product. We obviously, as a show, we talk to service providers and people who help with that technology, and their direct feedback is just that people just aren't interested. They're not ready. They don't really think that legislation's coming through, but I think it is.
Oh, legislation's coming through for sure. But the thing is that the digital product passport is the end of a huge piece of legislation called the ESPR legislation. And so actually, before you even get to the digital product passport, there's just the stuff you need to do. So designing out waste, designing for end of life, making sure that you've got the data in as a company. So the DPP, all that does is it aggregates the information.
Yeah.
So, but you have to have the information first. You can't have a digital product passport without all the information, without you doing the work. So again, most people for the next 2 years will just be heads down, getting all that information saved in one place, understanding what they're going to be taxed against, putting the systems in place to enable them to mitigate that tax, and then the very end game will be the DPP.
Yeah. I think it's going to be quite a scary time for a lot of brands and retailers that don't understand that's coming through yet. I wonder, and this is just me pondering, I wonder if it's because the UK has been generally quite lax in pushing through legislation around environmental change and product change. And I wonder if because people have seen these deadlines move and move and move, that they don't really take them seriously.
I think where you sit makes a big difference. So, a lot of the brands that we work with are US companies. The US is definitely not under the same pressure as we are in Europe. And even in Europe, there's, different member states. If you're in France and you're sat in France, you're totally feeling it because most of the legislation is kicked in already and the companies are on it. Dependent on the country, depends on how much of a focus it is for you.
Yeah.
But we all do link up to that same EU Green Deal principles. And so the UK has been, a year later on rolling stuff out.
Yeah.
But if you operate in Europe,
you've got to be
compliant anyway across all of this stuff.
Where do you think there is the biggest opportunity to make impact?
Our industry is a product industry. And around about between 50-60% of a product's environmental impact is within their packaging and materials used.
Yeah.
And so actually, if we can find a way to start to build circularity, build not just recycled materials, but reuse, disassembly, designing differently, that to me is where we're going to be able to save our biggest environmental impact. Not all brands think that way yet. And so, brands like to make things, but what about a rental model? How about you work, Universal Music Group have just launched a whole line with a company called Fashion Enter up in North London.
Yeah.
And they've basically taken dead stock that they can't sell from old concerts, and they've turned them inside out, put them in, they've literally used all this dead stock to create brand new clothes with, and they're selling them in their Carnaby store in London. Obviously, that's a very small percentage of the impact of them as a business. But if every business has an end-of-life solution, so recycling should be the last thing that we do because it's very energy efficient. But if you can say, well, 10% of this is going to go over there, it's going to create a new line. We're in the brand industry. Brands can, if it's exclusive and it's a one-off or a 20 or 100, people pay more for that. They're going to keep it for a little bit longer. So if there's just a way to have a strategy that maybe you can resell, you've got elements to bring stuff back, so you're building circularity into your operations already, that you can upcycle, reuse. I think you have to have a strategy that touches all of those. Yeah. And I think that's why people don't like it, because it's not just
it's not just taking no quick fix.
There's no quick fix, exactly. It's actually partnering to build those systems. And as that factory in North London gets busier, might become cheaper for them to make because they've got more work there. So if everybody clubbed together and did more of that, maybe that could be an efficient solution. And you have more of that hub manufacturing in local markets. We need to change how we do things. Yeah. And that's going to take time.
What an interesting time to be in the sector, though.
So fascinating.
I mean, people love it. I mean, I love a problem that I have no idea how to solve. I mean, I've got a lot of them at the moment, actually. But what it really forces you to think differently, and it's scary and it's not for everyone. I think people generally don't feel comfortable with change. But when you think around designing for longevity and changing the way we design, that, you know, it's new thinking in terms of materials. Yeah. But then you think about that end of life and you think, actually, how great would it be to have that ability to start communicating with your customer, not just when they buy the product, but when they're ready to give it to its next life. It's like whether that's going, you know, if it can't be reused, it goes to recycle, or maybe it's bringing it back to be created into something else. Maybe it's just going to somebody else who'll love it a little bit more for a bit longer. And I think it's no mean feat, I think, to put some of those systems in place. And it's going to take probably a lot of trial and error and a lot of failure. And I wonder how many people are brave enough, or how many businesses are going to be prepared to fail a little bit first to get it right.
Because it is trial and error.
Yeah.
And actually, I think a lot of the big fashion brands have been doing this because it's part of the value proposition. Yeah. Patagonia, you can send it back, they'll fix it for you, or you can send it back, get some money off, they'll sell your secondhand jacket. If you really want, you can get a new jacket. Yeah. So Levi's do the same. So the high-end design, you know, the high-end market are showing actually we care. That's a value to their customer. And actually Primark have started doing the same. They're doing repair workshops in store. They're designing for circularity, so you haven't got a big plastisol print on something. There's embroidery that could be, you know, unpicked if it needs to be, or because it's an organic material, it can go back into a system to be used for something else. So, you know, I think like 95% of a product's environmental footprint is determined at that design phase. Yeah. So when you're designing, if you have end of life in mind, then we can just get better products on the marketplace, and that's Primark. So
I think Primark are doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes that they don't talk about.
They're doing so much. They have head of circularity, head of water. I mean, they've got a whole team doing some amazing work, because they have to. Because their whole business model is cheap fashion. But actually, the way that they produce is no different to a Gucci or a Dior.
So one of the things that I'm super fascinated by at the moment is the behavioural shift between our younger consumers. And I mentioned her a little while ago, but one of the most eye-opening things for me is just the change in how younger consumers view new and second-loved and pre-loved. And that stigma that used to exist around kind of the new, I don't feel exists as much with our younger consumers. How do you think you've seen a change in behaviour in the last few years? Do you think that is, you know, a blanket statement of the younger generation of really seeing things differently? And if they are, what do you think is leading to that mindset change?
Well, you've got to think of, and I'm old, so when I was little,
Helena.
I was reading, you know, Z for Zachariah at school, and you know, and we were really worried about nuclear war. You know, that's what I went to bed with as a little person, worried about many years ago. But children today go to bed and they worry about climate.
Yeah,
which is really sad, actually. And so that's why they care so much. And that's why, you know, you see Vinted was only in the paper, last week or the week before, you know, record profits, double-digit growth. They're not looking at charity shops of they smell a little bit funny and maybe the older generation shopping there. Kids are going into charity shops, they're shopping Vinted. eBay sponsored Love Island. Yeah. I mean, if that's not the biggest call to action for that next generation to do things differently, I don't know what is. And so you're seeing these, you know, they're the marketplace for the circular economy. There's value. There's value in all of this stuff. So why would that younger consumer not want to buy the brands that they love at way less than half the price? When they're done with it, they'll just resell it again and get some money back. Yeah. And so they're thinking of the products that they have of having a value to them, and they can earn from that. So why would you not want to be that young entrepreneur looking after the environment at that young age if if the opportunity was out there for you to do that.
Yeah. So interestingly, one of the big wholesalers that we work with on one of our shows, he was telling me that his teenage son is an official hustler. He goes to charity shops.
Yeah.
He'll buy the stuff in the 90s that we were definitely not interested in, like the really uncool stuff. Like I wouldn't wear a Champion t-shirt in the 90s when I was growing up. But he buys it and resells it, and he sees it as a money thing. And I joke to my husband, it's like, you know, when I tell you that my handbags and my shoes are investment pieces, and you thought that was like not true. I was going to say something else. It's like, actually, they are investment pieces. You know, that £1,000 handbag that I bought 10 years ago actually still looks pretty good. Just treat the leather, off it goes. There's actually a resale value to it that I think I might have jokingly implied that one day I will part with this, but I'm not going to part with it. But if it did, it would be there. And I think it's that change in attitude that actually if something is well made, there is that resale value. And I think that is a behavioural shift in the way that people view this.
Totally. And even if you think of bulk buying children's clothes, you know, children grow so quickly.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff I've bought off eBay, or that my sister buys off eBay, and I've got this box, it's 10 to 13-year-olds, Next and Bowden and all these nice brands, and she'll sift through it with her kids. Then the box comes to my house, I sift through it with my kids, I give it back to her, and she resells it. She gets money. She gets most of her money back. Like, why would you not do that?
Yeah. But even just going back to how do we get consumers to a space where they will pay a little bit more for their product? Maybe there's a piece there that can be done around the resale value. Or you know what, if you keep this for a year, you know, we do it with cars. You buy a car, you keep it for 3 years, it'll depreciate a little bit, but there's some value left.
Yeah. But also if you look at digital product passports and what's going to start to evolve from 2027 onwards, and the blockchain technology, which will most likely enable you to showcase that product being re-owned by somebody else. So suddenly the future of social sharing, I might be able to say, you know, I'm that, a bit like you can see how many people have owned a car.
Yeah.
I'm the 5th owner of this jacket and I'm really proud. And then when you sell it on, the next person, well, I'm the 6th owner of this jacket. But actually for the brands that have produced that jacket, is there an opportunity for them to showcase that their products is still in circulation, so there's some kind of positive carbon budget or something? It's going to be just really fascinating to see where the impact lies in the future and the value of products in the future as well.
It's also, I think, the emotional attachment to some of those pieces that we have. Like I have a leather jacket from All Saints. I absolutely love it. It's the softest leather. I know for a fact if my niece was about 4 sizes bigger, she would steal it from me. She's a size 8, I am not. But I can see, you know, and it's husband's got a leather jacket that was from his dad. It's like there's those pieces that we do value that have emotional, sentimental attachment. But if you think of digital product passport, that's really just showing a different life cycle of that product. Still built to last. But actually, and even just the marketing campaigns for that, like if you track that as to where a dress has been, if you think of occasion wear, I would say occasion wear is probably my first go-to when I think of how much something costs versus how much it's worn and how much I've spent on some of my black tie dresses and how many times I've worn it. Yeah. And if you think of it from a sentimental perspective of those occasion wear dresses and actually how many weddings they could go to or how many people's lives they might have touched, it's such an interesting marketing strand around that second or third life of a piece.
And that's what we used to do with our clothes. You know, most people say, oh, this was my mum's from the 70s or 80s or whatever. We kept them. And actually just over the years, we've just got used to buying fashion really cheaply and is just not valuing it in the same way. And even the likes of, you know, Primark are, you know, they've built their own circularity white paper really that they work with internally to start to make products that are going to last longer. Yeah. You know, so they go through more washes, you know, the stitchings, you know, the products held together better. It's going to be interesting to see how even the lower end of the market is going to change over the next couple of years. Yeah. So we had Dr. Mark Sumner on a previous episode. Amazing. And he was talking about their T-shirt research that they did. I think he said 75 T-shirts. It might have been more. The thing that surprised him is that there was almost no difference in durability between the bottom and the top price tiers.
And I think going back to Primark, I think Primark are doing some amazing work behind the scenes on circularity, and they're structurally set up. I think most people would go into Primark and buy a £5 T-shirt or wherever they are and assume that's not going to last very long. And they're almost trained to think it's not going to last that long.
Because it's cheap.
And actually, it's probably going to last the same amount of time as your other T-shirts, if not a little bit longer, but again, I think that's down to some of the storytelling that maybe they're not doing at the moment around actually some of the quality and durability work they're doing, as well as trying to reduce that sustainability footprint.
And I'm sure that will come.
Yeah.
They're working on it. But if they only spoke about durability, somebody else is going to come and say something negative to them. So they've just got to be really careful with how they talk about the great work that they're doing.
And I think that goes back to something we spoke about a little bit earlier, which is that the great British public and consumers in general are generally not very forgiving of people who come out and say, we're doing this really well.
Yeah.
I think they see something that's being done really well and say, well, you're doing okay in that, but what about this, this and this? And there's less of, and maybe that will change over time, but I think there's less of a culture of celebrating actually. They're trying, they're on the journey, they're seeing some wins, they're sharing it, but it doesn't mean that everything else is forgotten about. It just means that that's a slightly harder problem to solve.
Exactly. There's so much happening in the back end of industry that you never even hear about being spoken about yet, because it's all within context of, especially on the circularity side of stuff. It might be across 5% of what they're doing, and they need to then get it to a point where it's scaled across 95%, or at least half by whatever day. And if a company talks about that 5%, it's going to be seen negatively. Yeah. But you've got to start somewhere. You've got to start the incubator products. You've got to then test it and see how it works. Look at the financial infrastructure of it, and then you look at how you scale it.
Yeah.
And, we need to partner more together to do that.
Yeah.
And actually not point the finger negatively when we see just a small percentage of something being done in the front end. Is actually go and do some research, because there's probably, a bit like an iceberg, so much going on underneath.
Yeah. I think what's interesting at the moment is we're seeing a lot of brands that have been started with sustainability and the right kind of principles for growth that are now in that scalability challenge. What would be the piece of advice you would give them for now they're looking at, right, we're growing, we need to do it in the right way, but this is a bit of a challenge.
You've got to stay true to the DNA of who you are as a brand, number one. And actually, is it infinite growth that they're after, or is it growth up into a certain area? Is it a growth through the sale of new product, or is it a percentage of that the resale of old product? It's like, what is the value proposition of that business, and how does it get split up into the different areas? Because, make something, sell something, don't care about the end of life of it. That's what we're moving away from. That's the old way of doing things. And so for those new brands that have set up as a sustainable brand, there's no such thing as a fully sustainable brand. It doesn't exist, because everything that we do has an impact. Yeah. So there's got to be a DNA to who they are. Is it that they are using more sustainably sourced materials? Is it because that they're printing and distributing in the UK and they've reduced their packaging? What makes them a more sustainable brand, and then look at how they kind of scale from that point. Because we see it all the time where brands have stayed true to the DNA. They then go and sell themselves to somebody, and then it's the brand name that continues, but actually the ethos of who they are as a brand doesn't stay. And that's when you see those brands actually then start to decline in the marketplace. Yeah.
And I wonder how much of that is down to growth being seen as volume. I think I've referenced this a few times, but there was a report, I think it was a McKinsey report, that said something along the lines of, and I'm happy to be proven wrong on this, but I'll also link to the report in here somewhere on our website. It said something along the lines of 80% of executives think that margin is driven by volume. You sell more stuff, you will make more profit.
And that's because of the old way. You've got to think of, the way that our business metrics are over 100 years old. And they were created to be as efficient as they can possibly be, to make as much money per unit as possible, without understanding the environmental impact or taking
or the cost.
The environmental impact or the cost to the environment to that. Now, the world is changing. Legislation is requiring us to build in the cost of the environmental impact. And if we don't build in the cost of the environmental impact, we're going to get taxed at the end of it. So we'll be taxed on the environmental impact anyway. So suddenly, this very old infrastructure that we've got in place for how we track business has got to change. We've got to rip up the rule book and create a new economy.
Yeah. And I think it's not necessarily about looking at everybody wants growth, but I think it's also not, I wonder if it's, I say it all the time, it's like profit's not a dirty word. You need to make it in order to make your business viable. But where that comes from and how that's made, and actually, again, using the data and the systems you have within your business. And I love some of the conversations that are going on at the moment around post-growth, degrowth, whatever you want to do it, or call it. I think the principle is still the same. I'm seeing more and more people talking about how do we maintain our margins by making less stuff? What does that mean to us? What does that mean? What does growth mean in that kind of a systems thinking?
And is it all growth or is it value? So where does the value lie within the company? Some of it might be value attributed back to the brand. That might have been money that you'd spent on marketing.
Yeah.
Is it value as in money per product? When you start looking at it all as a full infrastructure and not just separately in its little silos, and you look at the value of the company, that's when actually you can really start to play with those metrics. And there's profit within that. And is it growth of profit? But that's it's come from 5 different places.
And I wonder if this comes down to a lot of the language you use in this space. So much like we spoke about earlier, it's like, is it sustainability or are you de-risking your business?
And being efficient.
Yeah. Is it growth or is it how you build value? Because value is a term that investors understand as much as anything else. And actually, how are you building that longer term value? How's that linked to your products? How's that linked to how what does growth mean for your business? Is it looking at job creation? Is it looking at different places? Is it looking at how many stores you can open? Or is it thinking, you know what, maybe we don't need to have that many stores because our online sales are doing really well. But if we reduced our returns footprint, then actually that would have a huge impact as well. And I think that's where some of the end-to-end thinking around kind of circularity principles really makes businesses focus in on those efficiencies where they may lie and just start thinking about the business holistically rather than we just need to produce more stuff and that'll give us more money.
Yeah, and actually those returns, a lot of companies don't process those returns. They just get sent off to be dealt with in some way.
By dealt with, they don't get resold. Most consumers, and my mum was shocked by this when I told her. I said, do you know when you send that stuff back, that doesn't get resold. It just goes into a warehouse somewhere. Yeah. So then it's written off. Yeah. She's horrified.
It might even go to incineration.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, I'll get 3 different sizes, see which one fits me. It's shocking. But the new legislation, companies are going to have to will have to disclose their waste, their waste of stock. So suddenly you've been able to write that off as a waste in tax. That's not going to be able to be possible anymore. Yeah. So suddenly, actually, online marketplaces will have to start being more responsible for what gets sent back as well. It can't, It's going to be fascinating to see how that business landscape starts to change over the next 2 years, actually.
I think that returns problem. I always think return is retail's dirty little secret that consumers don't know.
But even, on
they
average,
will know soon.
But on average, about 30% of any product that gets made globally, doesn't even get to the consumer because they've just overproduced. Yeah. 30%.
Higher.
30% of overproduction. Some it's more, some it's less.
I think I remember reading somewhere in the UK it was more than 40% of products made here don't even get to sale.
Yeah, even books. Most books are on sale or return. Yeah. What do you think happens to all of those unsold books? They just all get pulped.
But again, I don't think we think about that as consumers.
People don't think about it.
So Helena, one last question. Well, I'm going to give you 2 questions.
Go on.
I know. So the first one is, what excites you the most about change that's coming through in the next few years? What do you look at and think, that's exciting?
I think that we can rather sit there and be sad that the way that business used to operate is no more, especially when people have done very well at business in the past, and of course they're going to want to defend. Or we look at what an opportunity to create and build a new way of operating in an industry. We've entered the 4th industrial revolution. We're in such a huge, how we're living our life at the minute. We're in so much change and fluctuation that actually there's an opportunity to build something really exciting for the generations to come, but also to make money and be happy and live a nice life. That to me is really exciting. I think also for me, because I've been in the sustainability space for 8 years, I've been running products of change for the last 6 years. I'm just really excited that legislation's come along and it's pushing businesses to do things differently, because without that carrot on the end of a stick, there's no way that we would be getting the progress that we're getting now. And we know that, some pieces of legislation are being watered down. We know that obviously the global landscape with where we are politically is a little bit challenging at the minute, with tariffs and lots of other pressures on industry. But legislation is still happening and it's still making businesses be responsible for what they're doing. And I think it's about time that happened. And to me, that's the most exciting thing for us, because it just means that
there's a deadline on change.
There's a deadline. And also it just means you've got to do it. So go be creative.
Yeah.
Go off on your offsite, figure out where the opportunity are. Come back to work and build that plan and be part of building that change.
Yeah.
That to me is what's really exciting. And that we're doing it for the next generation.
Yeah.
How great to be able to say we cared.
Yeah, we cared enough to start the change, and you guys continued it.
Exactly.
Second question, shout out for product to change. Now, so I thought we'd end on a really positive one. You guys do quite a lot of work, and I feel that a lot of businesses won't have awareness around how they work with you. But if somebody's on this journey and they want to get in touch, what resources do you have? How do they get in touch with you? How can they subscribe to the free stuff in case they can't afford to do some of the work? But how can they get involved?
So the first thing you can do is go to productsofchange.com and sign up for the free newsletter. We give you updates on what's happening within industry all the time. There's also quite a lot of free resources on there. There's a sustainability framework, so it's a free sustainability plan. And there's some white papers that we've got on there as well to help navigate industry. And then come join our community of people that want to change how they operate. So we don't make you commit to anything.
Yeah.
Commit to educating your workforce, because everybody in the workforce has got to do this. That's the first thing I'd say. And then there's loads of other stuff we do. We do a conference at the end of the year called the Products of Change Conference. It's happening on the 5th of November in London at the Royal Geographic Society. And then we have working groups. We built carbon methodologies for brand owners. That's all up for approval with the World Resource Institute, which is all very exciting. We built maturity indexes. We do webinars weekly to help people on packaging, legal, materiality, really looking at every area of the industry just to help. We want to give you the knowledge to help you on your journey. And then we've got an advisor service if you just need more help.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I know there's lots of resources on your site, which is why I thought, you know what, it's about sharing some of that knowledge. And I think everyone's curious, but I think sometimes you need to start looking. And for smaller brands and businesses, don't reinvent the wheel. There's lots of people who can actually help you get going, and then you make the right decisions for your business.
Exactly. Just start learning, start caring, put half an hour a week aside just to start. You'll find it so fascinating. You'll end up doing way more than that. And we're here to help and support.
That's great. Helena, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us. I've loved this chat. It's been... I think it's always great to have people who've been in retail and then gone through academia and they're now in an impact role. I think your journey is super interesting, but it also means you've always got a sensible hat on of you understand actually it is pretty tough for businesses, but there's always somewhere to start. So thank you.
Thank you. I know what it's like to sit in your position trying to drive a business. I do it myself, but now on the other side. But everybody's in the same position, and POC is a community of people that care, and we're all here to help and to share. And thank you for your time and dedication to helping POC lift the conversation, the industry as well. It's been a really nice conversation.
Cool. Thank you very much.